It's gonna be hot in here.
It's gonna be hot.
It is nice and warm.
It's too hot.
I'd like to attend some of your meetings with Walter sometime. I bet they're, said I'd like to attend some of your meetings with Walter. I bet they're lively. I really like Walter. He's a character.
Check the.
He delivered all
Hey,
four
Jim,
of my children.
Can you change the heat setting in here? Or is it
Rewarm.
not
I
gonna-
turned it off
You turned it on?
all the way down. Yeah.
Grief.
Where he's
The body heat.
I'm a big fan
Freezing
of
to
Walter,
death.
so you don't have to, but he's a
He's high
riot. He's a
maintenance.
riot. He's a riot, though. He's a riot.
No, he's great.
One of them needs to start being there.
That's probably a good idea.
Well, yeah, because they're not gonna do anything for us.
Oh, that's good. I saw that other chair over there.
Oh, he's putting the so that he so it'll cool down.
You know, but
Ready to go in.
Who had the tape recorder the other day? Do you?
Another minute. Another wait.
Probably.
Check your cell phone. See. It's worse. It's 2 minutes. You guys ready?
I'd like to call this January 7th meeting of the Cookeville City Council to order, please. Can we have a roll call?
Councilman Anderson,
Present.
Councilman Shelton,
Here.
Mayor Salee,
Present?
Vice Mayor Davis,
Present.
Councilman Williams,
Present.
all present.
All present. Thank you. If we could all rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Right. Mr. Shipley, do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda tonight?
No changes.
Seeing no changes, do we have a motion and a second to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Have our motion second. Any discussion by the council? Seeing none, I'll vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
That brings us to the old business portion of our meeting tonight. Item 2, excuse me. Consider approval of minutes of council meeting held December the 10th, 2009. Do we have a motion and a second to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Have our motion second. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing no discussion, I'll vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
And now to the consent agenda. 4 items. Item 3, excuse me, consider awarding bid for semi-annual rock bid for the Public Works Department. Consider approval of purchase of 3 video cameras and 2 radar units for the Police Department. And consider awarding bid for emergency response equipment for the motorcycles for the Police Department. And consider awarding bids for cable, copper, transformers, and uniforms for the Electric Department. Do we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any items that need to be pulled and discussed?
I do have a question. Can that go into this, or do we have to pull it
Sure.
to ask the question? Chief, on the video cameras, are those for the motorcycles, or are these replacement units, or?
No, they're not replacement units. They're brand new, and they're part of the grant that we were awarded.
Okay.
And our part of it's 25%. But no, they're brand. They're not for the motorcycles, I don't believe.
Are they replacing older ones we have?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you, Chief. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
All right. Now to the new business portion of our meeting. Item 7, hold a public hearing and consider on first reading ordinance 091221, amending the Cookeville zoning code to establish density bonus provisions for the conversion of non-conforming uses in the RM8 district. Sponsor Mr. James Mills.
Mayor and council members, a non-conforming use is a use that's existed prior to the adoption of a zoning code or a zoning amendment that's not allowed in the zone in which it's located. Such uses are allowed to continue indefinitely. Density bonuses are a common zoning incentive utilized to encourage the owners of non-conforming uses to change the use to a conforming use. A density bonus allows development at a greater density than is otherwise permitted in a particular zoning district. The Cookeville zoning code currently includes provisions for a density bonus for the conversion of non-conforming uses in all RS single-family residential districts and the RD single-family and duplex residential district. The ordinance before the council tonight would adopt a similar provisions for the RM8 district. Planning Commission approval of a density bonus for the conversion of a non-conforming use to a conforming use would be contingent upon several conditions. First, a request must be submitted to the Planning Commission which must include a description of the existing non-conforming use and the proposed conforming use. A site plan, elevations, and perspective drawings of proposed structures must be submitted to and approved by the Planning Commission. The density bonus could not exceed 20% of the minimum lot area. The current minimum lot size requirement in the RM8 district is 5,000 square feet per dwelling unit. Assuming approval of a maximum density bonus, it could be reduced to 4,000 square feet. For example, on a 1 acre site with a maximum bonus, the total number of dwelling units could be increased from 8 to 10 units. The non-conforming use would have to be removed within 90 days after the approval of the density bonus. All setback requirements would have to be met. And if the redevelopment required subdivision of the property, then a plat would also have to be submitted in conjunction with the request for the density bonus. The actual ordinance is depicted upon the screen. The creation of the proposed provisions for a density bonus in the RM8 district stems from the denial of a rezoning request from RM8 to RM14 properties located on West 12th Street, which is currently used as a non-conforming mobile home park. The proposed amendment has been approved by the Planning Commission and is recommended by the Planning Department.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mills. Now, do we have a motion and a second for approval?
So move.
Second.
We have our motion and a second. Discussion by the council.
Mr. Mills, when it says that the non-conforming use shall be discontinued within 90 days from the date of approval, that's 90 days from when, if this passes, when the second vote is taken?
No,
or
ma'am.
no?
No. If this second vote, if this is passed, the zoning code would be amended, which would allow a developer that has property or wants to purchase property in the city in RM8 that has a non-conforming use, would allow them to apply to the Planning Commission for a density bonus.
All right.
The 90 days is 90 days from the date the Planning Commission approves the density bonus.
Okay.
And then does that come back to the council as well?
No.
Straight from the planning commission
Right
to
from the plan,
approval?
just like it is for our single-family districts now.
Okay.
And what are the setbacks in this particular situation at this 1.8 acres?
In RM8 and in almost all our zones, when you're on a major street, like 12th Street, the front setback is 50 feet.
Okay.
In the RM8, the side is 10 and the rear is 20. But a larger setback area can be required when they're adjacent to other zones, such, for example, single-family zones. We have screening and buffering requirements, which can require a larger area than would be required for setbacks. But again, this, while this stemmed from a request to rezone on West 12th Street, if this is adopted, it applies to all non-conforming properties zoned as RM8 within the city of Cookeville.
And then each one of them would have to go through, any property would have to go through the same process?
Yes, to get the bonus.
To the planning commission?
Yes, sir.
And in your opinion, what could, other than this, obviously there are some trailer homes, I think, on this.
We have some
Property.
commercial uses in the RM8 zone that could potentially be removed. And that's the biggest use are some non-conforming commercial uses.
This is something that we had for single-family residential zones like RM5, 10, 15,
RS,
20.
yeah.
I'm
All
sorry,
our
RS.
single family, the RS20, RS15, RS10, RS5, and the RD, we have similar provisions in place for them. And this is common, this is used by many cities across the country.
Do we have anyone from the audience who has any comments about this item? If you do, you can come to the lectern, either one, and speak for up to, usually we like to keep it to about 3 to 5 minutes if possible, but please come up and share your opinions with the council if you'd like. Any further comments from the council? Seeing no further comments, all vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Item 8, hold a public hearing and consider on first reading ordinance 091222, rezoning 435, 445, 455 West 12th Street and 2 vacant lots on West 12th Street. Tax map numbers, I believe, is it a 40I or 401, James?
It's 40I.
40I G 1, 2, 2.01, 3, and 4 from RS10 single-family residential to RM8 multifamily residential. Sponsor, Mr. James Mills.
Mayor and council members, Mayor, as you stated, these 5 properties are located off of West 12th Street. The properties proposed for rezoning consist of approximately 4.69 acres combined. The current zoning of West 12th Street between Pine Avenue and Carolina Avenue is split, with the eastern half zoned as RM8 and the western half zoned as RS10. The subject properties are contiguous with RS10 zoning to the north and west, with RM8 zoning to the east, and with the UNV University zone to the south. The UNV zone to the south extends westward to Pine Avenue, which would mirror the western extent of the area proposed for rezoning. Adequate utilities are available to the properties. Each of the properties has frontage on West 12th Street, which is also State Highway 290, which is a major thoroughfare with 4 lanes and is classified as an arterial street. One parcel also has frontage on Pine Avenue, and another also has frontage not only on Pine Avenue but also on Bryce Drive. Pine Avenue is a minor local street which has a substandard pavement width. It's less than 20 feet wide. In some places it's down to 13 feet wide. Bryce Drive is also a minor local street, but it does comply with our pavement width standards. The RS10 district is intended for single-family residential development with a minimum lot size requirement of 10,000 square feet. The RM8 district is a mixed-use residential zone with a minimum lot size requirement of 5,000 square feet per dwelling unit. The minimum setback requirement in the RM8 district is 50 feet off of major streets, 25 feet off of local streets for multifamily developments, and if developed for single-family purposes or duplex purposes, the setback is 20 feet. Architectural design requirements apply for multifamily developments in the RM8 district. Townhouses and condominium developments are classified as multifamily developments for architectural design requirements. The owners of the 5 properties originally requested that their properties be rezoned to RM14 multifamily residential. The RM14 district is a high-density residential zone with a minimum lot size requirement of 3,000 square feet per dwelling unit. The petitioners indicated that they believe their properties were no longer appropriate for single-family development and would be better suited for higher density zoning due to several factors, including their frontage on a major arterial street, to the rental nature of contiguous land uses to the north and east, and to the current and planned expansion of the university property zone to the south. The request for the RM14 rezoning was first considered by the Planning Commission at their October meeting. 3 additional properties along West 12th Street, east of the subject properties, were also included in the request for RM14 zoning. These additional properties, as you can see on the screen, are zoned as RM8. The initial request received by the Planning Department was from a developer interested in removing a non-conforming mobile home park located at 415 and 421 West 12th Street and redeveloping it at a density higher than allowed under the existing RM8 zone. The developer first inquired about the possibility of extending the CL local commercial zone district from the east. The CL district allows density of residential development at a density of 3,000 square feet per dwelling unit. Again, the RM14 also allows it at 3,000 square feet per dwelling unit, but does not allow the commercial uses that are allowed in the CL. The developer was informed that rezoning only the 2 acres on which the mobile home park was located to RM14 would constitute spot zoning, and that additional properties would have to be included for the matter to be considered by the Planning Commission. The developer then contacted the owners of the properties along West 12th Street, west of the mobile home park to Pine Avenue, to consider, and we subsequently received a request from those property owners also asking to be included in the RM14 zone. So this is what we originally received a request for. These properties are the only properties, these additional properties that were added, are the only properties contiguous with the university zone on the entire north side of West 12th Street, not zoned for higher density development. At the October meeting, the Planning Department recommended that the Planning Commission consider rezoning to RM14 the entire block on the north side of West 12th Street between Carolina and Pine Avenue. This also included 2 additional properties to the east that weren't included in the original request. The recommendation excluded what was then Parcel 1 on Tax Map 40I Group G because it did not have frontage on West 12th Street. This parcel at that time consisted of approximately 1.05 acres. It was noted by the Planning Department at that meeting that the purpose of the request was to provide high enough density to encourage the redevelopment of the non-conforming mobile home park and to provide consistency of zoning for all parcels located in the northern block of West 12th Street between Pine and Carolina Avenues. Action regarding the requested rezoning was postponed by the Planning Commission at the October meeting until the November meeting to allow further study. At the November meeting, the Planning Department presented a recommendation in lieu of RM14 zoning to adopt density bonus provisions for the RM8 zone, which is what the council just previously approved on first reading, and to rezone to RM8 those properties along West 12th Street zoned as RS10 between Pine and Carolina Avenues. It was the opinion of the Planning Department that the proposal would allow for the potential conversion of the mobile home park and provide consistency in zoning for all properties contiguous with the university zone on the north side of West 12th Street. The recommendation included all of what is now Parcel 1 because it had been combined with Parcel 2.02 after the October meeting, giving it frontage on West 12th Street. The Planning Commission approved this recommendation. Several people spoke in opposition to the rezoning request at both meetings of the Planning Commission. The primary concerns were encroachment of higher density zoning, increased traffic, and traffic safety. As noted previously, the western extent of the proposed zoning would extend along West 12th Street no further than the UNV zone to the south currently does, with both stopping at Pine Avenue. The Planning Department is of the opinion that this is an appropriate breaking point from the concentrated single-family residential area to the west and would allow the subject properties to be treated the same as all other properties on the north side of West 12th Street contiguous with the UNV zone. Most recent traffic counts for West 12th Street indicate an average daily traffic of 8,989 cars a day. While this is a large number, a recent traffic analysis done by a Knoxville engineering firm indicates that the street is operating at a level of service C and can accommodate a significant increase in traffic while maintaining this service level. For example, North Willow Avenue, which is also a 4-lane state highway, carries an average daily traffic of 17,405 cars a day between Broad and 12th Streets and also operates at a level of service C. According to the records of the Cookeville Police Department, there have been no traffic accidents reported at the intersection of West 12th Street and Pine Avenue in the last 3 years, and only one accident reported in the last 3 years in the vicinity of the intersection. Now, our comprehensive future land use plan serves as a general guide for future development. The development plan consists of two components. One is a concept map depicting recommended land use, and one is a set of policies that we are to use to guide future land use decisions. The future land use map depicts the area along West 12th Street between Carolina Avenue and Pine Avenues as being best suited for residential development, with the eastern parcels indicated as mixed density residential and the western parcels indicated as lower density residential. Mixed density residential development is defined in our plan as development of between 4 and 8 units per acre. The RM8 zone allows density development at 8 units per acre. Additionally, the proposed rezoning would comply with several future land use policies for residential development. These include locating higher density developments along major traffic corridors with access to pedestrian amenities and close to cultural activities, schools, and parks, and locating higher density development in close proximity to existing higher density development. As noted previously, the proposed rezoning has been approved by the Planning Commission. It's recommended by the Planning Department. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mills. Do we have a motion and a second?
I'd like to make a motion to deny the request as presented to the council today, based upon the idea that these properties that we talked about, these changes that we talked about in the item previous to this, as well as a proposed athletics facility at the corner of Pine and 12th Street, may dramatically impede the traffic. And because those items are things that we know about today, I feel like the denial of this request for a year would allow us to better understand what's going to happen with this property going forward from today.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Have our motion and a second. Any discussion by the council?
Certainly, this has been a very heated subject, and a subject that I've spent a lot of time talking to people and going around. And last week, I asked Mr. Mills to take me and to make sure that I understood exactly what I was looking at and talking about. And I feel that our comprehensive plan is probably right on track. Whether it is something that's going to happen this year or next year or 3 years from now might be, we can't predict that. And but I feel like at this time we probably need to walk away from this and look at it as we see that area in the university start to develop and come back as a council. It may not be this council, definitely wouldn't be this council, be a different council, to look at it. And once again, these are hard decisions to make because nobody likes change, particularly if it's change that we're not looking for. And unfortunately, though, that's one thing that is constant for all of us is change. And I do think Cookeville has a plan and that we're in a better situation for city planning than we were, say, 20, 30 years ago. And but I'll have to go along with Councilman Williams on this.
I'd like to make a comment as well. I think of all the members of the council, I think myself laboring with this over the last 3 months has been a dramatic introduction to me to this group of people over here. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to hear all of your voices. I think one of the challenges going forward for me is the impetus, and I want to thank James and the planning department because they've done a fabulous job. I think the difference for me between now and then is we have made some dramatic changes as to what's going to happen on 12th Street. But I don't want us as a community to lose the idea that this is the only property on 12th Street that is not contiguous with 12th Street that is not zoned RM8. There's a very good possibility in the future that this property will be rezoned RM8. I think because of talking with the Building Codes Department, understanding what's going on at Tennessee Tech, I think understanding that there's this mobile home park that's going to get a facelift over the next year, we hope, that it's going to change a little bit how people are entering 12th Street. And one of the other challenges is, and Miss Goss is not here, but she's got plenty of friends, and I was able to speak with her, and there were some challenges for her and some access to Pine Street. And so all these things in combination, even though they was stressful at times and very difficult for us all to work through, I don't want the idea to be missed that this property going to 12th Street that's in question, except for the triangular piece, as it's so well known now, the triangular piece, there is the future land use plan from a planning department's perspective sees this possibility of being RM8 in the foreseeable future. And I think Councilwoman Anderson said it best. We don't know what the foreseeable future is, but from a planning perspective, we have to look at things as though they are 20 years from now. And in the next 20 years, we see sometime, whether that's next year or 5 years or 15 years, that this property, from a planning commission's perspective, is best suited for RM8. There's just a lot of changes which have occurred in the last 3 months as it relates to the property surrounding it. And the Planning Commission has made many compromises. As James said earlier, we originally looked at this as CL, then it went to RM14, then it went to a density bonus and RM8. So we're listening to the citizens. We're hearing what you have to say. But on the other hand, too, we have to look from a planning perspective where this property is going. And so appreciate your patience and your involvement here. And we want to protect all the citizens. From a planning perspective and from a city council, we feel like that right now the timing is a little premature. That's what I think. So, thank you.
Go ahead.
I think, to me, most of the time over the last 7.5 years that I've been on the council and we look at these rezonings, typically there is a landowner that has a potential plan for a property or a developer that on behalf of the landowner. And my biggest issue with this is there really isn't a plan. Now, while we can't zone based on, it's called contract zoning, you can't do that. It's nice and to have what potentially this property may look like. And I think the fear of a lot of the people that I've talked to, the fear is we have no idea what this could be. And that's a valid fear. And so if in fact the landowners and or a developer could come back, work on their plan and come back in a year, and as we've stated, this in fact probably maybe does need to be RM8. But if you can come back with a plan and say here's potential condos or townhomes that will actually enhance the neighborhood and won't take away and will add value to my property, then I think it would alleviate some of the fears that have been expressed to me, and it would just make more sense to have some kind of a, I use the word assurance. It's not really an assurance because even if a plan is presented, it doesn't mean they have to do it, but it does give you something to fall back on and to understand of what potentially this might be. So I had a problem all along with the infamous triangular part because I did feel like that encroached into whatever was there. Again, with the proper plan and what it could look like, maybe that would even go away if we kind of knew what might be.
And one last thing, I meant to say this earlier. I have to say that I appreciate all of the input that I've gotten from citizens. People have been very open and honest, and I've tried to be open and honest. Typically, if you go through the record, typically I've gone along with mostly what the Planning Commission recommends, but not always. That's why it comes to us, so that there's two boards to look at it, and it really has been very heartening to me to have so many people be so interested, both on the pro and con side. And for those of you who called and just left messages on my message machine, if you wanted me to call you back, I did. If you didn't, you were listened to, and it was duly noted. I listened to what you had to say. I wanted to thank people for that.
Well, I hope from everything that you've heard from the council persons, that you can tell that this council has studied the issue quite thoroughly, and it is not a clear-cut, easy-made decision to do this. And because, as you see from looking at the map, you've got RM8 right next to it, you've got across the street, you're going to see development that is certainly not conducive to single-family residents. So you know the future at some point is going to have to be an RM8. I mean, and so hopefully you'll get that, and there will not be, you know, anything any more than that, the RM8. But it's of course it's just those of you who live adjacent to that, it is of course more difficult. I have some had a little bit of not understanding the people who live in the other areas that seem to be very, very concerned because, as Mr. Mills has indicated, the traffic counts are not that severe, so that does not tend to bother Buckingham Place residents nor Mount Vernon. So those people who had issues with it, I didn't quite understand that because, see, the traffic is not that severe. So so I had to look at those mainly who were directly affected, which would be those people just north of that and just west of that area. I have some problem also with the Pine Avenue. That in that corner of that street is, to me, not standard like it should be, and so that makes it difficult to. Everything must come out on 12th, and then so we need to know just a little bit more about what ideas you might have, so in order to make a decision of let's go ahead right now. But then when you see what's going to happen in the future with Tennessee Tech and their facilities, we can better see how the traffic's going to turn out, and we could also hopefully have some better idea of how to upgrade Pine Avenue. And then I guess I didn't say from the beginning when I first looked at the map, I had trouble with the triangular piece, and I shared that with both sides of the issue, that I did not feel that fit in at this time and somehow should be worked out in another way at a future time. So I think with all that's been said, I feel like I will have to go along with rejecting this item right now, and we and I know it'll be looked at in the future. There's no way to avoid it with where it sits. It's going to be interesting to see how the portion that we just voted on before about the bonus density, to see how those townhomes, how that fits into the piece, because it backs up also to some residential areas. So when those things get in place or start to get in place, and residents can see, and council can see, and planning commission can see how these are fitting, and then I think that might be a more appropriate time for this to come back, and so it would be more readily acceptable and have some better idea of what's going to happen. But it's not going to stay as it is forever. I mean, nothing stays as it is forever. But we thank you for your interest, and we thank you for the patience with us as we struggle trying to put all these pieces together.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you all for your comments. I'd just like to make a few quick comments. Having sat on the Planning Commission for 4 years prior to this council, I must say that it is a very difficult job to sit in one of those seats, and that James Mills and our planning department do a fantastic job. The decisions that come from the Planning Commission are informed decisions, not emotional decisions. And one of the decisions in my life to run for city council 8 years ago was because of zoning changes that affected my neighborhood that I had to drive by every day. And I came to this chamber and spoke out against something and ultimately ran for city council. I would just like to encourage that maybe there's someone in this room who also would like to step up to the plate and run for city council next time. The other thing is that it's easy to see both sides, as we've heard from the council tonight. It's easy to see from a zoning standpoint, purely a zoning standpoint, the RM8 and the contiguous zoning with that, and it's also very easy to see the residents and the neighborhood and how that affects that. It's a tough decision. So, you know, like I say, this hasn't happened. This process hasn't been rushed. It's not intended to be rushed. It is a process for a particular reason, and it's to bring out the information, bring out the opinions of the residents in this community, and it happens in a methodical way. It happens that way almost each and every time, and I would say as much as 98% of the rezoning, of the rezoning requests that I've seen, almost all of them have some emotion attached to them. It's very normal. And I applaud all of you for the correspondence. It's been, for the most part, very well taken, and points, you know, very well received from the council, and I think from the planning commission as well. At this time, I'd like to open it up. If there's any comments from the audience, feel free to come up to the lectern, and you can identify, just please identify yourself, and then we'll give you 3 to 5 minutes.
I'm just anticipating the vote that it's going to be in my favor. Excuse me, I'm Francis Fritz. I live on East White Oak. My property backs up to the Pine Avenue, so I'm very interested to be right across the street. Thank you for giving me 365 days. We'll be back.
I'm Kent Goss. My mother is Sue Goss at the 1225 address, and I wanted to say I applaud your consideration for the human factor here and the quality of life. I appreciate that, and your concern for the neighborhood. This is, when we said our Pledge of Allegiance, this is the real core and the essence of a representative republic, and be able to come here and express our views and have you consider those. We appreciate that, and we've entrusted you to protect our rights and to protect our quality of life, and we appreciate that consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to add, too, that as a part of that process, you can also run for city council and
or volunteer for the planning commission.
That's right, or sit on the planning commission.
My name is Carl Lefevre. I live at 519 West 12th Street. I want to thank the council for their service to the community and for listening to me and putting up with me and returning my calls and everything. I really do appreciate it. And I had done a whole lot of research here to throw a lot of facts and figures out of you, but maybe from what I'm hearing up here tonight, I don't need to do that right now. But I do want to point out how much that the multifamily units are outpacing single-family units in the municipality, if that would be all right.
Mm-hmm.
Find my stuff here. And this comes from the Cookeville land use plan and the update that is going. I won't go through all of it, but I'll just tell you one here, that one line that stood out on me there. It is significant to note that from 2000 to 2008, the construction of multifamily units exceeded the construction of single-family units by 203 units. And in the entire past 25 years, it was 436 units. So I just want to put that in there for maybe if we have to come back in the next year or so. I want you to be thinking about that. And we got the paper last Sunday of bold headlines: multifamily structures dominate building permits in 2009. So I just wanted to make the point that we're losing a lot of single-family homes and a lot of neighborhoods that people have lived in for 30, 40, 50 years. And anyway, I won't bother you anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lefevre.
My name is Jan Fritz. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm the other half of Francis Fritz. And
The better-looking half.
We moved. We moved here 17 years ago, and when we moved into town, there was a big sign out, and one of the reasons we liked coming here, it said "Most Affordable City," and I just don't want this city to turn into the apartment city. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm
We'd love for you to
Please do.
communicate.
Please do.
My name's Raymond Fox, and I appreciate all your efforts. I surely do. My wife, Bonnie, and I live at 445 West 12th Street. For many years, the good Lord has blessed us, has allowed us to be stewards of almost 2 acres of this land. She's lived there for 50 years. I've lived there for 25, more than 25. This is our home, and we hope to live there for many more years. But we know that in the future, changes is going to come. Everyone knows that. We've paid taxes, we've maintained the property for many years, but find caring for it more difficult as we grow older. Most of the land is vacant, has never had any housing, but we know that it will be developed sometime in the future. We know this. Our family consists of twin daughters, their husbands, 2 grandsons, 1 granddaughter and her husband, who has given us 2 precious great-grandchildren. And naturally, we are concerned with their well-being, and we want the best for them in the future. And because this property is located next to Tennessee Tech, we believe that in the future that it'll be Tennessee Tech housing. We believe that our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren would benefit from the increased value of this land. And if caring and concern for your family's greed, that I'm guilty of greed. But I believe that most of us care about our families in the same way. I believe that's what happens to us. The area is Tennessee Tech neighborhood. That's what it is. The university is extremely important to Cookeville, Putnam County, and the surrounding area. And it's especially important for the ones that works there and us that have retired from there and get a check each month. Tennessee Tech is an excellent university. They seek and attract some of the best students in the country. I worked there for 30 years, and I found this to be true with the students that I worked with. Most of them are there to get a good education and to prepare themselves for life. Personally, I don't think Tennessee Tech students pose a threat to our neighborhood. That's all I've got to say. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fox.
Thank you.
My name is Sally Askew, and I live at 1255 East White Oak. And I want to thank all of you for listening to us and tell you what happened in my neighborhood briefly as a result of this. People came together from several neighborhoods, worked well together to look at what would be good for all involved, not just ourselves. And it amazed me that this process has been so nice and so easy, even when emotions have gotten a little up sometimes. But that's to be expected, especially when you feel threatened or you're caught off balance. But I'm so proud to live in Cookeville again and find that there's this kind of consideration among people and among the council and the planning commission, that we listen, we discuss, and we try to make the best decisions for everybody. I know I've been vocal, but others have too, and I thank you that we can be vocal and not have to be afraid. And when we walk away from here, we're all still friends, we're all still community, and we live in a great place.
Thank you, Ms. Askew.
Hi, I'm Gene Mullins, and Sam, I cannot run for city council. However, I am on the county commission. And there's a certain amount of irony in my standing here tonight, because the last time I addressed this body was for the county, asking for a rezoning request that was encroaching on a residential area. We came with a plan. We came with a plan that showed how we were going to ease that transition to make a buffer between our use and the existing residential uses. This particular rezoning request that we're discussing tonight is not the first time a use like that has encroached on residential areas, nor will it be the last. So I would encourage the City Council, the Planning Commission, and Mr. Mills to look at how we can address this issue in the future by whatever zoning requirements we need to do, so we can make sure that there is some sort of buffer transition zone between multifamily residential and single-family residential. I understand this particular issue is very complicated. I too work for Tennessee Tech. I understand that there's going to be a need for more apartments for increased enrollment. I commute on West 12th Street every day. I understand that daily traffic counts may not be as high as they are on Willow, but peak traffic counts around 7:30 or so, when half of the northern part of the county is trying to come into Cookeville, and you have students in the existing apartments and mobile homes there trying to cross 12th Street without regard to oncoming traffic, cars trying to enter 12th Street without regard to oncoming traffic.
Crosswalk.
The police department may not record near misses, but there are quite a few. And so we do need to consider the future long-term impact of putting increased multifamily residential along 12th Street. And I thank you for your time.
Great, thanks, Gene. And you're exempt from running for council since you already hold public office.
I think one thing that's worth making note, there is a buffering requirements between different uses in the city of Cookeville based upon our ordinance. So if there were to be some kind of development between multifamily and single family, there would have to be some buffering as a part of that planning, if you will. And so I think one thing we've heard from both sides is liberty and family, and most of the room today's heard what they wanted to hear, but I just want to reiterate, that we are a growing community. Thankfully, we are growing and we are changing, but one thing that we do have have to hang our hat on is the fact that we are a good community and we do communicate and we do make good decisions. And so the decision may be good for you today, but it might be bad for you tomorrow. And so therefore we have to remember to be a community first. And so I just want to encourage. I think it goes without saying. It probably goes without saying, but I want to say it. I think it's worth saying. And
I'd just like to add to that too that when the experience I was speaking to earlier on in my neighborhood with more growth, more traffic, those kinds of things that impacted me. I can remember driving by there with my grandmother, who was born in 1911, and her comment would be, as I grumbled about the development, would be, well, it beats a dead town. And she used to come into Cookeville in a wagon and horses from North Cookeville before there were paved roads. And if you look around in the Upper Cumberland region, particularly to the north, I can tell you there's some counties that would beg for growth. The key, and it sits right with our planning department and this council, is planned growth.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And we have to be preemptive rather than reactive and get in front of it. And some of the times that planning, it is emotional, and it does cause change, and it does make differences in people's lives and neighborhoods, but it does have to happen as we grow. We just have to do it in a smart and a cautious way.
As Mr. Fox pointed out, everyone's most valuable asset is their family, but their most valuable physical asset is probably their home and their property. And Mr. Mullins was referring to the plan that he presented. We sat as a council here about a little over a year ago, and that was in my neighborhood. And I sat out, and this room was as full as it is now, and every person in here was my neighbor. And I had to, I voted in what I thought was the best interest of all, not just my neighborhood. It happened, I truly believed it was the best interest of my neighborhood to put that emergency services building and the health department and the election commission where it is located now. And in fact, to this day, after it's been developed, because there was a plan and we knew kind of what it was going to be, that's why I could hang my hat and know that I wanted to live there the rest of my life, that my neighborhood would be protected. And in fact, it is. I've lived there a year, and I've heard one siren in a year, and you know how many calls are made every day. And the lighting is downlit, and it's, it has enhanced the neighborhood, and it's not taken away. And I would just say to Mr. Fox and Mr. Gentry, your property is your property, and the value is not going to go down. It's going to continue to go up, and even though it's not rezoned now, at some point we all recognize this is going to be developed, and I would encourage them. Again, I used to go home and see deer and fox, and you may see it now, but you may not at some point. So just be prepared and be flexible enough to know that when it does change doesn't have to be bad if it's done the right way. And I think that's the gist of everything that all of us are saying. And that's why we have planned growth, is so that it can be done right.
Well, and one thing that I've noticed in my studies as a city council person, more and more, most of us in this room, we live in a single-family home that has its own four walls. But as our economy continues and as we start looking towards being better stewards of our ecology, we're going to see that multiple single-family residents are really the norm for energy efficiency and all sorts of things. And for many young people, for my children, some of your grandchildren and children also, that might be the only way they'll be able to own a piece of property, is if it is a condominium or a multiple family residence. And more and more studies are showing that that's the way that we'll be going. And I have family that live in Europe, and Europeans have lived side by side, wall to wall, for hundreds and hundreds of years because of the lack of space. And I don't foresee that in the next few years in Cookeville, but we'll see more of that.
Well, and when I can't remember who brought up the headline about the multifamily building permits dominating 2009, I would almost would have wanted to add that probably and sadly in that same year the headlines also could have underneath that said foreclosures on single-family homes also dominated 2009.
Yeah.
And when you lose your home, you have to live somewhere, hopefully. So
Well, multifamily, like we said, doesn't necessarily mean apartments.
No,
So
That's right.
condominiums,
that's what we have to get
yeah,
past. That.
townhouses.
That's what that is. And obviously, if the supply and demand rules business, and if there wasn't a demand for that type of housing, then there would not continue to be those built.
One thing that has been instituted by this council or a planning department in this council is architectural standards. And if you're a developer or builder, you want to know about architectural standards because you just don't throw anything up. I mean, there's certain requirements with that, which makes we're trying to make our communities and our neighborhoods much more palatable to everybody. And so that's something that's rather new. So that you need to be familiar with that if you are going to be building something, developing something.
any further comments by the council? Any further comments from the audience? Seeing no further comments, I'll vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Item 9, hold a public hearing and consider on first reading ordinance 091223, rezoning a portion of 1227 North Washington Avenue, tax map 40KE 8.01 from RS10 Single Family Residential to CN Neighborhood Commercial. Sponsor Mr. James Mills.
Mayor, council members, the general location of this property is depicted upon the screen. Here's an aerial view of the property. The property at 1227 North Washington Avenue consists of approximately 47,507 square feet. At present, the zoning of the property is split, with the majority of the parcel, approximately 37,000 square feet, zoned as CN, and approximately 10,000 square feet zoned as RS10. In 2005, a portion of contiguous property identified as Parcel 3 on Tax Map 40K Group J was severed and added to the subject property. The severed portion, which was previously a part of Parcel 3, was zoned as RS10. The proposed rezoning would extend the CN district no further east than the current boundary of the CN zone on the remainder portion of the property. The portion of the property zoned as CN was zoned as CL Local Commercial prior to a comprehensive rezoning of the area in early 2008, which I think the council remembers. The CN zone is a mixed-use district allowing single and two-family residential dwellings and limited retail and business establishments. Non-residential structures are required to be compatible with nearby residential structures in terms of scale and appearance. The proposed rezoning has been approved by the Planning Commission, is recommended by the Planning Department.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mills. Do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, second. Discussion by the council?
Just for note, both these properties, the properties being rezoned, both pieces are owned by the same owner, correct?
Yeah.
Have you gotten any?
Correct.
Excuse me, have you gotten any comments?
We had comments at the planning commission from a adjacent property owner that was concerned about what was going to be built there. I don't know if they're here tonight, but again, this is CN.
Right.
Which is our most restrictive commercial zone. Whatever structures that are going to be located there have to blend in with the residential character of the neighborhood.
It's a part of the bigger white piece, correct?
Yes, it is, yeah.
And so
Excuse me?
there would be buffering all along the backside and to protect that.
All along the east side and the
Okay.
portion of the north side before you get to the railroad tracks.
Correct.
Do we have any comments from the audience? Any further comments from the council? Seeing no further comments, I'll vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Item 10, hold a public hearing and consider on first reading ordinance 091224, amendments to the official street map. Sponsor, Mr. James Mills.
Mayor and council members, amendments to our official street map are necessary due to addition of several streets in 2009. This map depicts the location of the streets, which are all located basically in the northern section of the city, with one street down here off of South Jefferson. The purpose of the official street map is to depict the streets for which the city of Cookeville is responsible for maintenance and to reflect the official street names or the official names of these streets. The list of the streets is depicted upon the screen. I believe you have copies of them in your notebooks. The amendments have been approved by the Planning Commission and are recommended by the Planning Department. Is there an error?
No.
No, I'm just looking at the names.
Move for approval.
Second.
Sorry, I'm
Oh,
asleep
sorry.
at the wheel
I
over
was
here.
fixing to say.
Oh,
I was waiting on you.
Do we have a motion and a second?
Yes.
Thought I'd
All
get
right.
the prod there.
Very good. Sorry, I was checking out the names here.
That's all
I
right.
was checking up the names.
Any discussion by the council?
I just had a couple of questions about the Mayor Dodson Lane and Cemetery Road, where it talks about the condition or fair, and most of the others are, all our others are good. So is there any plan to upgrade those two streets since they have been annexed?
Of course, it'll get on into our
Into
system. They
yes.
were just recently annexed. That's an area we just recently annexed, and of course, we have to take them as we get them. And they'll be placed in the system like all other city
Like
streets,
the
won't they,
others
Mr. Shipley?
Yeah. We like to get the poor ones first.
The what?
The poor ones.
Poor
first.
ones
That
first,
street's
before we
worse
go
than-
to fair. Yeah, okay, yes, that makes sense.
This really doesn't have anything to do with the map itself, but if somebody came to Cookeville and wanted a city map, how do you do that?
Depends on what kind of map they want. If it's
I
just-
mean like a road map.
Well, the chamber has maps that most people can pick up that are already prepared. We can prepare special maps. We've got our GIS system is second to nobody in the state, and we can put anything you want basically on a map at a nominal fee. But we can do
Fair,
that.
it's a fair fee.
Just wondered.
All right, any further discussion by the council?
Need a map.
Any comments from the audience? Seeing no further comments, I'll vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills.
Okay.
Item 11, consider authorizing the Electric Department Director to execute an agreement with the Tennessee Valley Authority providing for participation in a commercial efficiency advice and incentive pilot program. Sponsor, Mr. Tony Pete.
A little bit hard to say, isn't it, Mayor?
Some words there.
Mayor and council, you may remember a few meetings ago, I brought for your approval the in-home energy evaluation program, the pilot that we wanted to offer our customers. I mentioned at that time the CEA&I program for our commercial customers. Just a little bit of history. Back through the years, there's been a lot of programs through the electric department offered by TVA for residential customers. We had the weatherization, had the heat pump loans, and all those kind of things. And I'm really pleased to be bringing this to you, something for our small, medium, and large commercial customers, even though we do have some programs in place. Basically, this will target retrofits for our existing commercial establishments. It will pertain to the heating and air conditioning and lighting. And basically, you need to be in excess of 50 kW to qualify. And Initially, you're going to get probably a questionnaire from us to tell us what you're doing, how much potential savings there is, and then things change from there. You may get referred to our comprehensive services program where where TVA comes out and audits your facility, helps you make decisions and those kind of things. Or you may move, if you're over 5 kW in potential savings, you may move directly into some kind of an incentive program. And basically, what TVA is looking for is to shave their peak demand during certain times of the year. That time of the year being June to September from 2 to 5 p.m. That's when they set their peaks. And they are willing to pay people $200 per kW for HVAC or lighting kilowatt savings if it occurs, and we can measure it occurring during those times. It's just it's a fantastic program. I've already got a meeting lined up for the 13th for Tennessee Tech. They have a chilled water project that's going to take place in 2010. And we're going to be talking with Larry Wheaton, facilities engineer from Tech and TVA. There's going to be a lot of potential savings, so hopefully we can get quite a few $200 per kW for Tennessee Tech. After that meeting on the 13th, plan to roll this out. We'll be doing a little advertising. We'll also do some additional advertising about the in-home energy evaluation. And with all that being said, I have a manual. If you have questions, we can sort through it, but I would recommend your approval.
All right, thank you, Mr. Peak. Do we have a motion and a second to
Move
approve?
approval. Second.
Our motion and a second. Any discussion by the council?
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, anything to save on energy.
And I might point out, this is a pilot. It is subject to change until we refine it enough to offer it to the entire Tennessee Valley.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Peak, for bringing this to us. Any further discussion by the council? Comments from the audience? Seeing no further comments, all vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Peak. This time we have our hearing of citizens indoor delegations, and we invite folks to come and speak for up to 3 minutes about any topic they'd like to. We had pretty good attendance tonight, and we'd encourage everyone that was here tonight to come back each and every first and third Thursday at 6 p.m. here at the Cookeville City Hall. Any announcements from the council? Jean? Alma?
School's out tomorrow.
School's out tomorrow. I really
Be
appreciate
careful. Stay
Yeah.
safe.
It is really
and
slick out there.
Stay warm.
And it's so warm in here, I'm afraid if we get much hotter, the sprinkler system's going to go off.
We actually turned it off, and didn't help. But Happy New Year, too, to our citizens. It's the first meeting of the year, and so.
Absolutely. I think 2010 is going to be much better than 2009, and we'll continue to get better. And I appreciate everybody being here. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And second. Unanimous vote.
All right. If I get a motion, I'm the second. Happy New Year. You don't get second, baby.
Oh, yeah, to do that.
It did get